Welcome into another edition of the In the Money podcast for KeenelandSelect.com as we are into the Saratoga and Del Mar meets, and that's where we are spending the bulk of our time on this edition of the podcast. I'm Tom Leach, along with Keeneland's Director of Simulcasting, Jim Goodman. We'll also, at the end of this talk, just briefly about the Haskell and the Monmouth card on Sunday. But Saturday, they have 3 stakes races at Saratoga, and 2 of them are Grade 1. So let's start with the first one, Jim. That is the Grade 1 Prioress for 3-year-old fillies, sprinting 6 furlongs. It's early on the card, the 5th race. Kauai Katie will be the favorite in there. Can you beat her?
I guess they put this early to keep it out of the late pick 4 because they think she's going to be such a huge favorite, and she probably will be. I think the value play in here might be Rosario on So Many Ways for Tom Amos. The horse comes out of Iowa Oak, so obviously she's not the same class as Kauai Katie, but second off layoff. If you go back in her past performances, she's 2 for 2 at Saratoga, which is very important. Won the Grade 1 Spinaway last year there, and I'm going to take her simply because Kauai Katie's probably going to be 3 to 5. And there's a horse in here that I love, the name Juju Eyeballs, and I was talking to someone earlier today about this horse, and they looked at me like they had a blank look, and nobody remembers the Beatles come together in Juju Eyeballs. So I felt so old, but I want to bet this horse. The horse is coming off 5 in a row, so it's a great name for a horse, and maybe you want to put a couple bucks on that one just as a hunch play on a Beatles song.
Well, that's actually who I picked. I was trying to find somebody to beat Kauai Katie, and I just thought this filly looks like she's improving, and she got an 85 buyer last time, which was her lifetime best. It's a little bit of a stretch, but I'm just not real wild about Kauai Katie at a low price. I don't know that she's a whole lot better than she was as a 2-year-old, so I'm going to just take a little small swing with Juju Eyeballs, and then I'll use her with Wildcat Lily and Kauai Katie. The 9th race is the Grade 1 Diana for 3-year-olds and up, fillies and mares going 1 mile and 1/8 on the turf course, and Chad Brown has 3 in here, and I see in the forum where he's likely to scratch. He talked about he'd take a look at the turf conditions and decide who to run. So I would suspect at least one of these 3 will scratch, but no guarantee as to which one that'll be. This was a really tough handicapping challenge in terms of the quality of the field. Where did you go?
I think when you handicap this race, you got to be a weatherman, and the weather at Belmont looks like it's going to be clear. It's nice on Thursday when we're taping this, and if they don't get any rain, the turf course stays firm. I think that favors a couple of horses. Day at the Spa, one of Chad Brown's horses, and also Center Court for Rusty Arnold. I think those horses run better on firm turf, and I think Stephanie's Kitten runs better on off turf. So I'm going to take Day at the Spa, Center Court just barely over Day at the Spa, and then I'm going to say that Laughing is the 3rd choice. Stephanie's Kitten, if it's a firm turf, I'm going to kind of toss her at my own risk of tossing a Ramsey horse. But I think those 2, and I think Center Court a little bit better than Day at the Spa.
I think, personally, on her best day, Center Court might just have a little bit of an edge on these. And she didn't run particularly well at a distance I think it's a little shorter than her best on Belmont Day, and she had a little trouble as well. So I'm hoping that because of that, and because of Chad Brown, who they love to bet, having at least 1 runner, and I hope 3 in here to take money, I'm hoping to get, I don't know, maybe 3 to 1 on Center Court. If I do, I'll really love her. If she starts to get real low, I might just pass the race or play her in doubles to the Jim Dandy, which we'll talk about next. But Center Court's going to be my pick, and then I would key her with Stephanie's Kitten. And I think she could run well on firm too, but she certainly does have an affinity for the off turf. And then I'd take a look at the Chad Brown horses and the prices, and maybe play one of those in an exacta as well. But really, for me, I think it's going to be Center Court to win, and then keying her in daily doubles to horses I like in the Jim Dandy, which is where we'll go next. Grade 2 Jim Dandy, 3-year-olds at 1 mile and 1/8, the prep for the Travers later this month. Palace Malice, the Belmont winners in here. And we expect to see Palace Malice, Orb, and Oxbow, who we'll talk about in a minute, all show up in the Travers. Who did you like in the Jim Dandy?
It's a pretty good prep race, $600,000.
Yes, it is.
It's a nice race. I think Palace Malice is going to be heavily bet. I'm not sure that he's as effective at a mile and an eighth, but he's going to be the deserving favorite for Pletcher. And off the Belmont win, he looked very impressive. And Mike Smith flies in to ride him again, so he's going to be the obvious favorite. So therefore, I'm going to try to beat him. I think My Loot has a lot of upside. They've given him a rest since the Preakness. He ran a nice race against Oxbow, against the bias that day. Oxbow, controlled the pace there. Got a 103 buyer. They give him some time off, and I think it sets up very well for My Loot to come off the pace here. Code West might be the good key beneath very consistent Baffert horse and Rosario, so I'm going to key Code West in second and third in my trifectas, but I'm going to take My Loot on top.
I think Code West is the one for me. I think he's going to be better at longer distances, so the mile and eighth is going to be great, and he might be even better at the Travers if he runs well in here. I like the fact that Rosario takes the mount for Baffert, and this horse is just working great. So he was on the Derby trail and early, and they took him off and considered the Belmont, and then took a more conservative route with his horse throughout the spring, and I think maybe they're about to get rewarded for that. So I'm going to take Code West to win this, and I like actually Freedom Child a lot too, and so I'm going to take Code West to win and key him in exactas with Freedom Child and Palace Malice, and then I'm going to play the doubles I talked about with Center Court. I would use with all three of the horses I mentioned, Code West, Freedom Child, and Palace Malice, all back to Center Court in the previous race. Del Mar has a couple of stakes. First one we'll talk about is the fourth race on their card. It's the Fleet Treat for Calbred 3-year-old fillies going 7 furlongs. I like to find a way to beat favorites, but doing hard time again, I think will be favored, and for looks to be in top form for Hollendorfer, has won at Del Mar, and she gets Bejarano, who's just been on fire out there. So doing hard time was the pick for me, and for exactas, I'd use Swiss Bliss and Kiona, the 5 and the 7 respectively, but couldn't get too creative here. What about you?
Oh, I got creative.
Oh, good.
I think doing hard time again and Sweet Marini are going to beat each other. I think Sweet Marini runs right behind her twice in a row, and then comes back and gets better and beats Zuzu's Petals in the next race. And I think they go to the lead, and I think they beat each other up, and I'm going to take a flyer on John Sadler with Tribal Peace. Maldonado has not ridden that well at Del Mar. He's 2 for 35 right now, but he is tough on the California circuit. I'm going to take this horse to close and run him down in the stretch in the 7 furlongs.
Eighth race is the Grade 2 San Diego Handicap at a mile on the 16th for 3-year-olds and up. So you're going to try to beat would expect who's the favorite there, Painter?
Absolutely not. He's going to be 2 to 5. He deserves to be. If you watched that last race, 114 buyer. He wasn't running against anything, but he hadn't been out for 11 months. And, he's a great story coming back from the serious illnesses that he had. The last Grade 1 he ran in was the Haskell last year. And if you remember, he won by 3 3/4 and just blew him away. And I think he's obviously much better now than he was. And I think he wins this one in a walk, and it's going to be a cold exacta with Kettle Corn running second.
Can't argue with that. That Painter was sensational in the comeback, and I don't think he necessarily has to have the lead. He could sit just off if he needed to. And speed's been really good at Del Mar in the early days of the meet. So Painter for me with Kettle Corn and Liaison, who like the synthetic at Hollywood, so maybe he'll take to the poly at Del Mar. So if Kettle Corn doesn't do it, I might have a little exacta with Liaison underneath Painter. But Painter on top for me as well. Let's take a quick look at the Grade 1 Haskell on Sunday. It's the 13th race on the Monmouth card, which has some great stakes races. In fact, you like one a little earlier in the card that we'll talk about. But in the Haskell, I was between Oxbow and Verrazano, started to pick one of those two, and they'll both be a low price. And I thought, I'm going to try to look for a horse with some value that I don't really think could win, but maybe could get second and be a decent exacta. And I ended up with pick of the litter for Dale Romans. Hadn't run since the Lexington Stakes at Keeneland, but flashed some potential in the spring down at Florida. Ran pretty well in a couple of tough tries in the Florida Derby and the Lexington, and has been off since then. And so I'm going to try that horse and box him with Oxbow and with Verrazano and hope at a big price he could get second. And I'll have him the other way just in case for a smaller wager in case he were to win. What about you?
Well, I think it sets up well for Oxbow here. I think Verrazano is going to be the favorite. There was some talk on the website today. He should be 4 to 5 morning line, and he may not be that low, but he usually get a lot of support. And I think Power Broker goes out and challenges him for the lead, and I think it sets it up for Oxbow just off the pace, with the long shot from the Kentucky Derby, Golden Soul, getting up for second. And I'm going to take Oxbow over Golden Soul in the Haskell. And I do like the 12th race leading up to Haskell. It's a much better betting race than the Haskell is, with 11 horses. It's a mile and 16th on the turf. It's called the Ocean Port Stakes. And there's a horse in there named Hudson Steel that we've liked in the past that very likely is a favorite. Had a little tune-up at Colonial the other day, or June 22nd, ready for this race, coming out of Grade 1s, and I think he's going to be a nice price in here. But there's a lot of choices. How Great, General Logan, Change of Command. So you can. That's the race I think that you go deep in and you take your favorite in the Haskell and you play a late pick 4. They've got 14 races on Saturday, so starts at 12 noon. You can come to Keeneland and watch it. You can bet on Keeneland Select. It's a great day for the Haskell card at Monmouth Park.
Yeah, usually some decent prices on that day too. So I'm looking forward to handicapping the Monmouth card on Sunday. And anything special going on? Contest? Anything for Keeneland Simulcast patrons?
Absolutely. On Saturday, it's our Daily Racing Form NTRA handicapping contest. We got 3 spots to Vegas. You can handicap the horses from 5 tracks. It costs $150. First place is between $8,000 and $11,000, depending on how many entries you get, and you get a spot in the DRF NTRA finals in Vegas in January. So that's Saturday. You can sign up Saturday morning, and first race is at 12:50.
And you can find out all his information about what's going on at Keeneland at Keeneland.com, and then the wagering through KeenelandSelect.com. And we'll be back here next week on the In the Money podcast to talk about more great stakes racing going on out at Del Mar and Saratoga and other spots. So join us then for the In the Money podcast.